Gary Leon Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, is one of America's most prolific serial killers, convicted of 49 murders and suspected of killing over 70 women in Washington state during the 1980s and 1990s. His crimes were chilling, targeting vulnerable women, mostly sex workers and runaways. He lured them with a charming facade, strangled them with brutal precision, and dumped their bodies in wooded areas or rivers, often returned to defile their corpses. In this documentary, we dive deep into the horrors of Ridgway's crimes through the lens of psychology and psychoanalysis, unraveling the twisted mind behind these atrocities to understand what drove a man to become a monster. Why make a documentary about Gary Ridgway? Because his crimes aren't just gruesome, they're a psychological puzzle that demands to be solved. Ridgway wasn't a flashy killer taunting police like Ted Bundy or a sadistic torturer like Jeffrey Dahmer. He was methodical, almost mechanical, blending into society as a quiet truck painter while secretly waging a one-man war against women. From a psychological perspective, his case is a goldmine, a mix of psychopathy, sexual deviance, and a chilling ability to compartmentalize his double life. Picture this: a man who kisses his wife goodnight, reads the Bible, then slips out to strangle a woman in the woods, her body left to rot as he drives home to tuck his son into bed. His victims, often young, desperate women, were raped, choked with bare hands or ligatures, their bodies discarded like trash in the Green River or hidden in dense forests. Some were mutilated post-mortem, their corpses violated in acts of necrophilia so depraved they shocked even seasoned detectives. This isn't just murder. It's a window into a mind so fractured, so cold, it makes your skin crawl. Let's step into the shadows of Gary Ridgway's past, where the seeds of his darkness were sown. Born in 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah, Ridgway grew up in a working-class family that looked normal from the outside, but was a pressure cooker dysfunction. His mother, Mary Rita, was a dominant force, volatile, controlling, and, according to Ridgway's own accounts, disturbingly inappropriate. He wet the bed until his early teens, a red flag in psychology known as part of the McDonald triad, often linked to later violent behavior. After each incident, Mary would wash his genitals, a ritual that left young Gary both humiliated and sexually aroused. Psychoanalysts would call this a perfect storm, a mix of shame, rage, and warped sexual fixation that fused in his developing psyche. He later admitted to fantasizing about killing her, imagining stabbing her in the chest or slashing her face, a textbook case of displaced matricide, where hatred for a mother figure is redirected onto other victims. His father, a bus driver, was passive, often retreating from Mary's outbursts. He once shared stories of a co-worker at a mortuary who engaged in necrophilia, tales that fascinated young Gary and planted a seed for his later obsessions. The family dynamic was chaotic. Violent arguments, corporal punishment with belts, and a young Gary caught in the crossfire. He was dyslexic with an IQ in the low 80s, struggling in school and held back a year, which deepened his sense of inadequacy. By adolescence, the warning signs were screaming. At 16, he lured a 6-year-old boy into the woods and stabbed him in the liver, laughing as he wiped the blade on the boy's shirt, saying, "I always wanted to know what it felt like to kill." The boy survived, but the incident was a chilling preview of the predator Ridgway would become. From a psychoanalytic perspective, Ridgway's childhood was a crucible for what psychologists call a psychopathic personality. His mother's behavior, both abusive and sexually charged, created profound Oedipal conflict, blending desire and hatred. Dr. J. Reed Malloy, a forensic psychologist, explains that such experiences can fuel displaced matricide, where a killer unconsciously targets women who symbolize the mother figure. Ridgway's low empathy, evident even in childhood, aligns with psychopathy, a disorder marked by a lack of remorse, shallow emotions, and a callous disregard for others. His early violence, from animal cruelty to arson, showed a mind already wired for destruction. Fast forward to the early 1980s. Ridgway, now in his 30s, is a Navy veteran, a truck painter, and a married man living in King County, Washington. On the surface, he's unremarkable, a quiet guy who attends church, loves camping, and dotes on his son. But beneath this mask lurks a predator, his psyche a ticking bomb. What pushed him over the edge? Psychoanalysts point to a series of triggers: His first marriage ended in 1972 when his wife cheated, leaving him humiliated and enraged. He called her a whore, a term he'd later applied to his victims. This betrayal, coupled with his mother's lingering influence, ignited a hatred for women, especially those he saw as tainted like sex workers. Ridgway's choice of victims wasn't random. It was deeply psychological. He targeted sex workers and runaways, women society often ignored, because they were easy prey and symbolized impure women he both desired and despised. In his mind, he was cleaning the streets, a warped rationalization that let him justify his crimes. This cognitive dissonance, holding contradictory beliefs, like being a devout Christian while murdering, helped him compartmentalize his life. He'd cry at church sermons, then drive to the strip near SeaTac, where he'd charm a woman into his truck with a smile or a photo of his son to gain her trust. Once alone, the mask dropped. He'd rape them, strangle them from behind to avoid their faces, and dump their bodies in clusters to confuse police. Often, he'd return to the corpses for necrophilia, a paraphilic disorder driven by a need for total control over a lifeless body. No rejection, no judgment. Dr. Michael McGrath, a forensic psychiatrist, explains that serial killers like Ridgway dehumanize their victims, viewing them as objects rather than people. Ridgway himself said, "They don't mean anything to me," and complained about the inconvenience of disposing of bodies, once griping about breaking a taillight while unloading a corpse. This chilling detachment, coupled with his sexual compulsion, points to a mix of psychopathy and sexual sadism, where power and dominance fueled his arousal. His methodical approach, spreading out crime scenes, destroying evidence, and maintaining a nice guy facade, shows what psychologists call adaptive intelligence, allowing him to evade capture for nearly 2 decades. Close your eyes and imagine a moonless night in 1982, the Green River's waters whispering through the dark. A young woman, maybe 16, climbs into a pickup truck, reassured by the driver's gentle voice and a photo of his kid. She doesn't know she's already dead. Ridgway drives her to a secluded spot, the air thick with pine and dread. He chats, disarming her, then strikes. His hands clamp around her throat, her gasps fading as her body goes limp. He doesn't look at her face. He can't. To him, she's not human, just garbage, as he later told police. Her body is dragged into the underbrush, left in a grotesque pose, only be revisited later for acts so vile they defy comprehension. This scene played out dozens of times. Each murder a ritual control, each body a trophy. Police reports paint a grim picture. Victims were found in shallow graves, some wrapped in plastic, others tangled in river weeds. One detective recalled finding a body so decomposed it fell apart like wet tissue paper. Witnesses, including a surviving hitchhiker, described Ridgway's eerie calm, his ability to switch from friendly to feral in seconds. Media dubbed him the Green River Killer after the first body surfaced in 1982, sparking panic in Seattle. It was like a ghost was hunting these women, a local reporter said, capturing the community's terror. Ridgway thrived on this fear, his forensic awareness, dumping bodies in clusters, avoiding traceable evidence, making him a phantom. Even when suspected in 1983, he passed a polygraph, his psychopathy letting him lie without a flicker of stress. Psychoanalytically, these crimes reflect a need to dominate and destroy the feminine archetype that haunted him, his mother's shadow in every victim. His necrophilic acts, as Dr. Malloy notes, were about possessing a woman who could never resist or betray him, a perverse inversion of his childhood humiliation. The strangulation method, intimate and hands-on, gave him ultimate power, a stark contrast to the powerlessness he felt as a boy. Each kill was a release, but like an addict, he needed more, his compulsion growing with every body left in the woods. What's scarier than a killer? A killer who blends in. Ridgway was a chameleon, living a life so ordinary it was invisible. He worked 9 to 5 at a Kenworth truck plant, never missing a shift. He married 3 times, his wives oblivious to his crimes. His third wife, Judith, called him gentle and loving, even as he murdered during their marriage. He used his son as a prop, showing photos or toys to lull victims into trust, once killing a woman while his 7-year-old waited in the truck. When asked if he had killed his son had the boy seen, Ridgway chillingly replied, "I don't know." This double life is a hallmark of organized serial killers. For the FBI's profiling system, Ridgway's ability to segment his existence, family man by day, predator by night, shows what psychologists call compartmentalization, a coping mechanism that let him function without guilt. He was devoutly religious, yet saw no conflict in his sins, a sign of moral disengagement. His co-workers called him polite and forgettable, his blandness a perfect disguise. Posts on X mention him, leaving victims jewelry at work, relishing when co-workers wore it, a subtle way to relive his crimes. This manipulative glee, paired with his lack of remorse, screams psychopathy, a disorder where the self is all that matters. For nearly 20 years, Ridgway was a ghost, slipping through the fingers of the Green River Task Force. Profilers like John Douglas pegged him as a local with a hatred for women, but early profiling missed key traits, misled by his unassuming nature. Ted Bundy, consulted in 1984, correctly guessed the killer revisited bodies for necrophilia, urging police to stake out dump sites. But Ridgway was cautious, his forensic awareness thwarting investigators. In 1987, they searched his home, finding nothing conclusive. The breakthrough came in 2001, when DNA technology caught up. Semen from early victims, preserved for decades, matched Ridgway's DNA, collected in 1987. Fiber evidence from his truck sealed the case. Arrested on November 30th, 2001, he initially denied everything, but the evidence was ironclad. In a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, he confessed to 49 murders, leading police to more bodies. His confessions were robotic, detailing kills with the detachment of a grocery list. "I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight," he said, a quote that chilled the nation. He's now serving 49 life sentences at Washington State Penitentiary, a living relic of horror. As the cell door slammed shut on Gary Ridgway, the world exhaled, but the questions lingered. Why? How does a man become this? Philosophically, Ridgway's story is a descent into nihilism, a rejection of human connection in favor of absolute self-indulgence. His crimes reflect what philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called the will of power, a drive to dominate others to affirm one's existence. Ridgway's need for control over his victims, his secrets, his double life, was his way of imposing order on a chaotic inner world. Yet, in his pursuit of power, he became a slave to his compulsions, a paradox that defines many serial killers. Existentially, Ridgway's life raises a haunting question. What separates us from monsters? His ability to mimic normalcy suggests the line is thinner than we'd like. His tears in court, when a victim's father forgave him, were likely self-pity, not remorse, a psychopath's mimicry of emotion. From a psychological view, his case underscores a need for early intervention in troubled childhoods, but philosophically, it's a reminder that evil isn't a cartoon villain. It's human, banal, and terrifyingly close. Ridgway's end, rotting in a cell, forgotten by the world he terrorized, is poetic justice, but offers no closure for families whose lives he shattered. His legacy is a warning. The monsters we fear most are the ones who look like us.